Well, greetings again. This is Dr. Bill Wyatt with the American Orthodontic Society, and I'm going to go into lesson number 4 on ectopic eruption of the teeth. This is something that happens to young people where the 6-year molar, you can have other areas like this, but the 6-year molar, the permanent tooth, will come in behind the baby, the second deciduous molar of the teeth, and it comes up and eats the root away, and if it moves that tooth out of the way, comes forward and robs much of the space in here, so you have to learn to deal with ectopically erupting teeth early on. You see them forming, and you have to go in and correct that. And I'm going to show you how to do that thing. And while I'm thinking about it, I don't want you to think that I know all this computer stuff. I am pretty stupid as far as doing all this computer, but I have a Reverend James Oliver here is a computer whiz, and he is putting this stuff up for me. And so don't think that I've got sense enough to present this to the world. He is the main thing in doing this. So anyway, we're going to start out here and show you what we do. I'm going to get this little thing going here. This ectopically erupting teeth. And this is where the permanent teeth lead, the permanent 6-year molar leads too far down, and it comes in and eats the root of the baby tooth out, and you lose it. This is a neat little girl here. She is just a joy to work on. We joked with her, and she has just come right back at us with everything. And we showed her how to do this. And she had a ectopically erupting 6-year molar on the right side of her mouth. And her mother, I think, works for a dentist somewhere else and brought her in here for us to work on. And we set this up. It's a lot simpler than this, actually. You can just see this wire right here that's in there. You could just bond that wire onto these baby teeth. Now this is the baby tooth has half the root of it gone already. And we bond it here and bond it here. You don't even need a bracket. Just put a wire in there and stick it to the baby teeth with some composite. And now we bend this little spring. This is the permanent 6-year molar coming in underneath this tooth. And we put a spring on here. And this spring was just one go down like this, something like that. And now you hook it up, and the spring is tightened up like this, and it'll pick this tooth up and move it right back where it ought to be. And you leave this tooth will have one root holding it in there, but it works perfectly as a space maintainer until the permanent bicuspid coming in has room for it to come through there. All right, here's just another view of it. Now here's a close-up. This is this little spring after it had corrected the tooth. See, the tooth now is sitting right in here, and let me go back one. The tooth was like this before, and we bonded this on here, bonded a tube on it. All you have to do is get to the side of the tooth, take a little of this old tissue away with electrosurge or something, bond a tube on it, put this little spring in there, it bends it up here, and it has a force to pick that tooth up and carry it out, even though it butts against this tooth. Don't grind the tooth off. The force will shove this tooth up and bring this tooth back. There's not a movement that the teeth make that we can't come up with a counter movement on teeth. at any age and any body, so you can always do it. Don't grind this tooth off. Just let this tooth come up. It'll bump it and shove it up and bring this back and line it up. I'm going to erase that so you can see it and watch what happens. Watch this spring right here is going to slide back as this tooth raises up right there. Now this spring was up here. Now it's back here. It picked that tooth up, shoved the upper tooth out of the way, lined up, and is laid in there. Now this will allow the permanent bicuspid to come in. It will be coming in this area. The next bicuspid will come in here, and of course this will be the permanent cuspid. This is the simplest, fastest, best way. I don't care what AI or anything else. If anybody comes up with a better way of doing that, I'd like for them to show it to me, and I'll show it to the world. But this is the easiest, best way to do that. In my way of thinking, somebody may come up someday with something better than that. But this is how this needs to be done, and you don't sit around and wait till they're 12 or 14 to sit them and get their teeth straight, because this will cause this tooth to be lost. That 6-year molar will come on in and erupt up like that. If you don't believe it, you leave it alone and you watch one. It'll cause the loss of this tooth right here, and this tooth will move in here, and they won't have any room for these teeth to come in, and they'll have to extract some. They very rarely go back and make the 6-year molar go back where it was. You got to catch it along the way. And that's where everybody that is a pediatric dentist ought to know how to do this. It is ridiculous that pediatric dentists are not taught this. And I just get really tore up over that. This ought to be something that every pediatric dentist knows how to do. Everybody that works on kids ought to know how to do this. Or ought to, and you see it coming. If you leave it alone, they'll lose this tooth, and that tooth will erupt in here, and you'll have to come in and to set it back where it was originally. Then it will be a lot harder to do. You need to catch it on the way, and you see it, and it can be coming from the top or the bottom. And we've made one back when we couldn't bond the thing on there. We made it where we would hook a spring up and catch it up there. And this can be done, and you can find other cases we've done by punching the button here, and it'll show you those cases. I'm going to erase that so you'll be able to see this. Now this is correct. I'm going to show you this little spring we made come in here. And for me to bend that and hook it in here, bend it up there, it had to tighten this spring up, and that spring just picked that tooth up, and I didn't have to touch it. And it's this thing, you got to hook this up here, and it slides back as the tooth comes up. We'll show you that on X-ray. Now here is this tooth. Here's the little spring. We bonded something. That's all you really need. You can bond this wire on. You don't need any brackets for that. So you could do that. All you need is a tube in here, and this is a rectangular pieces of wire that you could spring up here. And I use, in our straight wires, we use 018 slots, and we use smaller wire, and you can make them better and easier than can you bigger wires that you use 022 by 028. This is a 1725 rectangular wire right in here. This is a round wire here. This is a rectangular wire that's set in here too, because this just slides back on that as it raises that tooth up. Now you can see it on the X-ray here. This little girl came in we took a Panorex X-ray. You can see this permanent tooth here. Here is the bicuspid coming in, right underneath there. One root is already gone. Don't try to move this tooth with this tooth. I've seen people so ridiculous try to stick a piece of metal in here. They'll cause this tooth to go. Put your tube on the tooth down here. Make the little spring. It just comes down, circle around like that, and then, but when you engage it and you bend it up here, tightens the spring up, and this spring will take this tooth, push it up here, shove that tooth out of the way, push this tooth out of the way if it's in there. It'll come up and set up in here, and you'll have the tooth set right there. Now watch this happen right here. And this is done, and then you let harness nature to do some of this stuff. You don't need to work on this tooth to put it up there. Just tie something to it, spring off of these teeth here. It pushes them down, but that is harder to do than it is this to go up, and this will go up every time you do it. I've done it on many, many teeth. I'm going to erase that now. Let's go one more. This was 2 of 86, 221 of 86. And here it is, 4 of 86. It's already got the tooth out here. You see this baby tooth has no root. The bicuspid is coming up in that place. If you had waited till they get 12 years old and send them to an orthodontist to do this, this would have already been gone. This tooth would be over here, and you have a real problem then. And most of the orthodontists would not know how to even do it to bring this tooth back. This ought to be done by pediatric dentist, and I don't care who says that is wrong, that is right. And that's the way it ought to be. And if you're working on kids and you can learn how to do this, you got to do this. Now we go a little bit longer and we leave it. I'm going to move it a little bit further. I'll erase that. Now that tooth is up here like that. Now you keep it here and pull it forward. You come up and you pull this tooth forward. This action will bring the roots of the teeth forward too as you pull it up here. Slide it. This is enough root to hold that tooth in place. It's still alive and everything. The second bicuspid will erupt. By the time you lose this one will be ready to come out. And the tooth will straighten. It'll end up, I don't think we carry it to the end, but it'll show you another view of it from here. There is the little spring. It's made a little different. When I drew it, you could come out like that. But this side over here is what you spring down, and that puts the force of the spring. In other words, this thing would be going down here, and it'll kick that tooth right out of there. This is upside down. That fits onto the root, and it slides backward as this tooth comes up. Let me go back and show you how. See, this was here when we were working on it. It was right there. But as this goes up, this is going to slide back there. Let me go back one more and show you. So this slid, this wire here was here. When this gets up here, it's here. Now you can tie onto this and bring this tooth forward. This will bring the root of the tooth forward too. And you pull it up in here. This will take it, or you could just let this rest. It'll lead over here. This tooth will still come in there. So it's not even too important to bring this forward. You've got to have this attached on the side of the tooth now to get it to do that. Let me look at it again. Back here. You see, I had to cover it here, and I trimmed this out with electrosurge, stuck this little deal on the side of the tooth, put this in there, let it harden good. Put your spring in there, raise it up and hook it onto an area right behind one of the attachments. And as this goes back, this pulls this forward, and it leaves this tooth in there with one good root on it, and it'll stay there till it bicuspid's coming in. It'll come in about the same time with this. This ought to be done by pediatric dentists, and you do it when you need to do it. You don't sit around and leave the case alone until they're 12 or 14 years old before you start straightening the teeth. This has to be done along the way, and it ought to be done by pediatric dentists. And I hope the people that are teaching pediatric dentists will look at this and come to your senses. Don't sit around and wait on this. It'll lose this tooth, and this one will end up over here. Every time, this needs to be taken care of, whether it's at the top or the bottom. This is an ectopically erupting 6-year molar, and this is the way it ought to be handled. And I would like to talk to the heads of the pediatric dentists. I have taught so many pediatric dentists, they don't teach them this at school. The orthodontists maybe have control over it. They want them to send them over to him. But you're not going to send this person to an orthodontist every time some little problem comes up like this. The pediatric dentist ought to learn how to do these early problems. I'll show you several more of them as we go along through this. So stick with me. We have 900 and something videos, and there's several of them about ectopically erupting. I'll show you those. You can get them. We're going to fix it where you just punch a button and they'll pull up the ones that are on what you need to know. If you're a dentist anywhere in the world, you can look at this and see how to do it, and you can do this for people and save that, and then these teeth will come in correct. Thank you for watching, and I don't mean to fuss about this.